Down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the number one liquid-fueled, liquid, lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast. And it's been a little bit since I've kind of ran through all the chats, so let me go ahead and do that real quick. Welcome, 3 Chevy, Buddy Weiser, Becky Warneford. Let's see, who else do I have? Bam, 1356, Outlaw Dogs, of course. I have David Van Hook over on YouTube, and he says it's been a minute since I've been live. Well, I hope that you're, like, normally alive. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, we're looking for Tommy and Mark over on Facebook. They're missing. Uh-oh, missing in action. Let's hope they come in just a little bit of time for that. And I see Buddy has his nanners back over on Rumble, which is fantastic. He's using that to his advantage. And let's see. Oh, I missed Palms. Palms are us. I missed you over on Rumble. I'm sorry. That was bad. Let's see. Who else did I miss? Is there anybody else that I missed? I think yeah, that should be pretty much everybody that I see, at least for right now. Okay. So oh my gosh. I don't know if you guys have been, I've just been laughing the last couple of days. Thursday was not a very good day for the left. Oh, and I've been chuckling the entire freaking last couple of days. Every time I pick up my phone and I start looking at social media outlets, it just, my gosh, these people, they're in a total meltdown. I've got quite a bit of that, plus some other stuff that kind of has come out in the last couple of, we'll say the last couple of days, but probably within the last 24 hours that you may not know about. Also, I have a interesting question of the week. It's kind of a short answer, but it is a interesting question of the week. It sort of compares and contrasts a couple of things. So anyway, lots of stuff, ton of stuff to do. Also, don't forget that my next broadcast, which is Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, is on Valentine's Day. Now, if you have a Valentine that you take out and you do the whole, dinner thing, theater, whatever it is, take them out on a date, that's great. Go ahead and do that. But I have a special guest here with me in the studio. Mrs. Whiskey has agreed to come on the program with me. So you guys will actually get to see Mrs. Whiskey in the flesh. Although she won't be drinking whiskey, she will be drinking wine. She's already told me that she can't stand whiskey, she can't stand drinking whiskey. She can stand me because we've been married for 25, 26 years, something like that. We'll figure all of that out on Wednesday, and I'll probably embarrass myself on Wednesday as well. She may have an embarrassing tale or two. For you guys on Wednesday. But anyway, all right, let's get right into it. First of all, I am drinking Walcott, Kentucky bourbon tonight, of course. And it is a straight Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. So anyway, that is what is in my We the People Shot USA, LuckyShotUSA.com glass with the nice flag on it, even though it's really hard to see with the green screen and stuff. So it's there. And here we are right here. Good stuff. Good stuff. Oh, don't give me that, Bonnie, just because it's not your favorite. Although, Bonnie, Mrs. Whiskey went out and did grab me another bottle of Four Roses, the regular Four Roses, not the special, not the special one and stuff. But anyway, she does have it. I just haven't cracked the bottle yet. So that is what it is. All right, let's go ahead and get to my Saturday night sponsor, I guess I'd call them. Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one singular mission: to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, iotc.whiskeymusings.online, to sign up. And while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.whiskeymusings.online to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.whiskeymusings.online. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution, go to support the show, of course. Go to constitution.whiskeymusings.online. Check this thing out. It has got 1/8 of an inch of leather. It has water-resistant and tear-resistant pages. And check out that binding. It goes all the way through the leather and everything, all the pages, everything else. They have a 100-year warranty against defects in manufacturing and materials. It has sexy rounded corners, according to my rumblers. And the interior has been checked and verified to have all of the amendments in Roman numerical order, as well as my youngest whiskey warrior has used this specific document in order to pass his civics badge in Scouts. So the information contained within is accurate and trustworthy. It has been buddy tested, buddy approved, Billy tasted, Billy approved. And of course, like I said, my youngest whiskey warrior has approved it as well. Go to constitution.whiskeymusings.online to get your copy today. Pass it out to one of your liberal friends and just watch them explode as they try to tear the god darn thing apart. Anyway, head on over to IOTC, to the Institute on the Constitution, at my link, iotc.whiskeymusings.online, and check out their other stuff as well. I do appreciate them for allowing me to be an ambassador as well as an affiliate. So that is really, really awesome. Okay. Speaking of the Constitution, that is our first thing up, but our first story up when I get up here. But I forgot. I keep forgetting this. I don't know why I keep forgetting this. This is a fan favorite we've got to do on this day in American history. And of course, for on this day in American history, we read from the American Patriots Almanac, written by William J. Bennett and John T.E. Cribb, chock full with all kinds of little factoids and stories about our historical founding. It is fantastic. You should pick a copy up for yourself. I don't get anything from the show for that, but I can tell you that Yeah. Oh, and by the way, I've just been told, because I happened to just look up at the chat, but apparently my youngest fan is out there watching tonight. Welcome, young man. Have a lot of respect for you, sir. All right, so tonight is February 10th. We are going to talk about the president and the teddy bear. Every day, millions of children across the country and around the world cuddle up with their favorite teddy bears. How did toy bears become so popular, and how did they come to be called Teddy? Well, credit Teddy Roosevelt, our 26th president, as well as a political cartoonist and some resourceful entrepreneurs. In 1902, Roosevelt, who was an avid outdoorsman, went on a bear hunting trip in Mississippi. The president was a good hunter, but on this particular trip, he had terrible luck. For several days, he never even saw a bear. Finally, one of his guides cornered a small black bear, wounded it, and tied it to a tree. Then he called for the president to come shoot it. Teddy, the sportsman, resolutely refused. He had eagerly shot grizzly bears in the Wild West, but had no interest in taking an unfair advantage of a terrified, trapped animal. When Washington Post cartoonist Clifford Berryman heard the story, he drew a picture of the president turning away in disgust from the idea of shooting the helpless bear. The nation loved the fact that their president had spared the poor creature, and in no time it became the story of Teddy's bear. By early 1903, two Russian Jewish immigrants named Morris and Rose Michtom were making and selling stuffed teddy bears in their Brooklyn shop. One of the Michtom's original stuffed bears can be seen at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History in Washington, D.C. About the same time, toy company FAO Schwarz of New York City began selling plush teddy bears made in a German toy factory. A worldwide craze began, which shows no signs of ebbing more than a century later. And that is tonight's On This Day in American History. I knew that the teddy bear was named for Theodore Roosevelt, but I wasn't aware of all of those other wonderful little factoids. That just gives you an idea of that book, how fantastic that book actually is. They do a lot of research and stuff. So that's cool. All right. As I pointed out in my opening, the left has gone nuts again. Which is, honestly, I mean, the times that they go crazy is really, it's really every single time that they're wrong. But let's just go ahead and put this out there. So I told you on Wednesday that Thursday, the 8th, the SCOTUS was going to hear oral arguments on the idea of using the 14th Amendment to remove Trump from the ballot. And I had been telling people all this time on social media that it is highly unlikely that SCOTUS was going to side with Colorado. And there's several different reasons why. I outlined them many times on this show. Let me go ahead and just run through them really quick. I mean, the first thing is that the president is not named in the president himself is not actually named in the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And so there is some question as to whether or not the 14th would actually apply to the president. The second one is the fact that, and I think this one is actually the most likely to be the direction that the SCOTUS is going to go, is that under Section 5 in the 14th Amendment, it strictly states that Congress shall enforce the amendment through legislation. And legislation, they went and created Title 18, United States Code Section 2383, which nobody has been charged with, let alone tried or convicted of. Then you have the other factor of the idea of, is it actually an insurrection? And pretty much anyone with half or more of a brain, typically the half or less kind of falls into the left, but the half or more of a brain can actually look at all of the video, not just the edited crap that the January 6th committee television program put on, but you can look at all of the video and you can see that it wasn't an organized insurrection. There were areas that did get out of hand and turned riotous. There were areas where people were milling about and not really doing anything. And so to call that a actual organized insurrection is just ludicrous. And anyone who does so, of course, is completely asinine for doing so. Then you also have the whole idea of Trump organizing it. There isn't a single shred of evidence, and even the FBI came out fairly quickly, too, basically saying that essentially that there was no insurrection, there was no coordination that they could determine by the president to any of the groups that were involved, groups or individuals that were involved. And so, it just, again, you have this leftist idea that they just want to get Trump no matter what. And if you listen to the questions that were out there, being put out there by the SCOTUS. And the other thing I want to point out, too, is that there was a last-ditch push to attempt to try and get Clarence Thomas to recuse himself because of the fact that his wife, Ginny, was somehow tangentially connected to January 6th in some weird fashion or whatever. And that failed, of course. And that's something that the left is just completely nuts over, is the fact that Clarence Thomas actually was even there. But all of this is again, it's all a part of the entire scheme. Now, I might be missing some certain points because, let's face it, the 14th Amendment and its application is very nuanced. But I think I hit most of the main points. Now, the other thing, too, that I also I thought of as well is the fact that, the left keeps saying, well, if the states can't kick them off the ballot, then the states can't be in control over things like abortion. And I responded to a few of those comments on social media, and I essentially, in particular X, and I essentially said, well, there's a huge difference. One is that abortion is not in the Constitution. And two, you have this thing called the 10th Amendment. And the 10th Amendment strictly states that if it is not in the Constitution itself, which the 14th Amendment is, nor strictly prohibited by it to the states, which under Section 5, that strictly prohibits in a kind of a if you really want to take a broad spectrum interpretation of the fifth of Section 5 out of the 14th, it literally kind of says that the Congress is the one that's in charge, not the states. And so, all of these things and all of these factors can get wrapped up into the whole thing with regards to whether or not they're going to kick Trump off. Now, the left, of course, went crazy for this. And the reason being is because even their favorite justices, Ketanji Brown Jackson and, Kagan and Sotomayor, they all had a bit of a problem with that. They just went ahead and, let's face it, they were very, very cold and very matter of fact with the lawyers, in particular, the Colorado lawyer. And it just was a bit of a thing here. Now, this article that I have here from Fox News, It pretty much it just outlines it. They kind of did a sort of like a running blog during the time of the questioning. And so they kind of went through and they were like, talking about the questions, how the White House isn't going to talk about it. Jonathan Turley himself saying that the SCOTUS had a perfectly glacial reception to the Trump ballot removal arguments, which is true. They should. I mean, let's be honest with you. We really should do this. And so anyway, and then they were talking again about some of the things. They're mentioning that the Supreme Court ruling will likely be expected within days or weeks. And I'm fairly certain that we'll probably hear about it here in just a little bit. By that, I mean, I'm going to guess by the end of the month, maybe, because this is incredibly important. And of course, the March 4th deadline is coming up. So, for Colorado in particular, Kagan took a tact, which was sort of interesting. Why should one state decide who gets to be president? And she kind of, pushed that. Again, I kind of agree. You can't just have one state decide, that particular president is going to be on the ballot. And then let's see. Kavanaugh actually drilled the Colorado attorney on what the meaning of insurrection in the Constitution was. That was an interesting tact for it. He basically asks, what does the word mean? How do you define it? Who decides whether or not someone actually engaged in it? He also went back, Kavanaugh himself also went back into some of the archives and looked at like the 1869 decision, which is known as the Griffin's case, which found that an act of Congress was necessary to actually enforce the 14th Amendment on the insurrectionists to hold office. So there's a lot of questions. Actually Jackson, Ketanji Brown Jackson, pointed out that Section 3 doesn't actually refer to the president, even though there was a person on Rumble or on X that kept circling the word president, but missed out the first two words, which is electors of the president. So, yeah, again, there's some question as to whether or not it actually meant to be attached to the president himself. And the office of. So there's just a lot of questions with regards to this. And there's a whole slew of ways that the Supreme Court could go in order to avoid all of this. But I think the final word, honestly, the final word out of this is fully expecting to be that, there's no way that Colorado can just remove him from the ballot, which is, not surprising, to be completely honest. Not surprising at all. All right. I am being hollered at because I missed us doing the Pledge of Allegiance. So before I move on to the next story, let's go ahead and do that. Please, if you are of a mind to, please stand to remove your hat and join in with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and that is a new piece to the program that I'm supposed to do in the beginning, and I keep forgetting to do it. All right, well, I forgot to do it tonight. I don't keep forgetting. This is the first time that I've forgotten it, but it's something that was been added in the last couple of weeks. So it's fairly brand new, so I'm going to fall on my sword there. That was all my fault for that. All right. So while the left was going off and going nuts over that, okay, while the left was going absolutely crazy during the time because, of course, it was very well covered by a lot of news outlets. They were carrying on the audio from the chamber as the arguments were being made. And so, the left, of course, on social media was going nuts over that. Well, then a little bit later on, and I think, honestly, the release of this might have been timed with the idea that they were going to try and slide it under the radar. I think they were expecting that the whole 14th Amendment SCOTUS thing was going to take up the entire news, the news cycle, and that this report was just going to kind of get dropped and nobody was really going to pay attention to it. Well, they were wrong, because Thursday afternoon, the special counsel, who essentially has been investigating the Biden classified documents scandal, which, of course, we all know those pictures that came out of them being in his, garage next to his Corvette and all of that stuff. Well, yeah, the special counsel, I think a lot of people actually forgot that was even still going on. I mean, it was sort of one of those things where everybody just sort of said, oh, well, it's just going to get swept under the rug, so who the hell cares? But then the bombshell dropped. Now, I've been saying on this program, I highly doubt that Joe Biden is going to get impeached for anything. Okay. And honestly, this is better than an impeachment. Because the reason for that, honestly, is because of the fact that this actually strikes at him from a political perspective. The impeachment probably was going to go over about as easily or as, uneventfully as the two impeachments on Donald Trump. The House would impeach them, send everything over to the Senate, and the Senate would squash it. And it would become essentially a non-starter. But in this particular case, this is actually better, in my opinion. This is actually better because now we actually have people who are truly talking about what was included in the report. And I myself have been, again, batting at the left on social media the last 48 hours or 24 hours, whatever, 36, whatever it is. And I've been smacking them around because of the fact that there are several nuggets of information in this report that are just completely damning to Joe Biden. Okay. The first one, of course, is in the headline here from the Daily Wire that you see here. Biden willfully retained and disclosed classified materials. So this is the big thing right here, is that he willfully retained and disclosed those classified materials to others. So, and keep in mind, okay, this is not, unlike the left sitting here and saying, oh, this is no different than the Trump case. This is no different. There actually is a huge difference, a huge legal difference. And I pointed this out to a so-called lawyer on X. The biggest difference between Trump and Biden comes down to one simple thing. Trump was the president and had declassification authority. Biden, when he took these documents, was a VP and a senator, and they just don't have it. I don't care what anybody tells you. I don't care what anybody says. Oh, Trump's obstructing. Trump's doing this. Trump's doing that. There's not that much evidence of Trump obstruction. Okay, number one. Number two is the fact that, again, I go back to the whole point. Trump was president. He had the authority to declassify whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, at whatever time he wanted in any kind of manner that he wanted. Just by his actions, you could say that he was declassifying something. For an example, if he had a piece of evidence or a document in his hand and handed it over to another member of our government, not a foreign entity, but another member of our government, and had that person read it, knowing that that person does not have top secret clearance, you could easily argue that his action in doing so automatically declassified that document. Simple. Biden did not have that capability when he was a VP, nor when he was a senator. And in fact, within the report, there is even discussions of how he, as VP, would go down and take a look at his notes that, according to the report, were on top of classified documents, that he went to a SCIF, which is a special room that is designed for you to read and peruse classified documents, top secret, specially compartmented information. Okay. He would go to that room in order to look at those notes and stuff. So it's not like he had no idea of the process. The guy's been in the government for over 40 years, almost 50. There's no freaking way he did not know what the process was. And he did not know, at least at the time that he took the documents, that he did not know about any of this. Now, Palms R Us brings up a good point, saying, what about Pence? He was just a VP. You are absolutely correct. Pence or anybody else having that document in their hand is under the same law and same restrictions as what anybody else in the government would be. Okay? So for him, for Biden, this pretty much is, and this report is pretty much, you kind of remember, I don't know, just a few years ago, something about, 30,000 emails that went missing. Somebody that, went and bleached bit, used bleach bit, destroyed BlackBerries with a hammer, so on and so forth. This is very reminiscent of that kind of thing, where it's basically saying, yep, Biden's guilty, but we're not going to prosecute him. Now, don't sit here and think that that is a huge, problem at the DOJ. And the reason why I say that is because, again, you're looking at an 80-plus-year-old geriatric man who's losing his memory, and this is exactly what Special Prosecutor Hur, H-U-R, Special Prosecutor Hur, calls out in the report, that he's a well-meaning, well-mannered, senile old man. And that's pretty much it. He's a senile old man, and the chances are that that the jury at the time is not going to, they wouldn't convict. They would just see him as a doddering, nice, well-mannered, old man who tends to forget things. And yeah, that's basically what's going to happen. So that ultimately is where the report goes. Now, there were a couple of other things that I think a lot of people didn't catch in the report. Now, first of all, the left immediately was like, there's no way this guy has the chops, medical chops, to be basically calling this kind of thing out. I mean, he really shouldn't. And the thing about it is that, again, all he's doing is, essentially giving a report of what he observed. He's not giving a medical diagnosis. He's just basically saying that this guy really has a hard time remembering things, can't remember stuff that would be essentially crucial. Things like when his son died, or can't remember when he was vice president, like what years was he vice president, which honestly didn't happen that long ago. Now, for those of us who are just standard Americans, we want to forget those dates, at least forget the dates that he was vice president. I would love to forget the date that he took office. But the fact of the matter is that these are things that are significant in this man's life, and he can't seem to remember them. So, anyway, this special counsel report has actually just like, holy crap, did a whole bunch of stuff. Now, Bonnie, you bring up a really good point. She says, oh, so all we have to do is act like we do not remember. Good to know. Well, here's the thing, is that actually, believe it or not, a lawyer, if you are accused of a crime, that is a decent tactic to say things like, I do not recall, if you're on the stand. I don't remember. I don't recall specific details. Those kinds of things. That is a tactic that a lot of lawyers put into place. So there is some suggestion that this is that might have been something that Biden was doing in order to try and throw these people off. So the key here, though, is whether or not he remembers the details or not. Remembering details and things like that, and remembering what he did, doesn't absolve him at all of the point that he literally walked out with those materials and hung on to them. Now, what does this do? And this kind of brings up an interesting point. What does this do for Trump's case? Because in this document, in the report, they were talking about a lot of these documents are when things were, he scribbled notes on them. For an example, he scribbled a bunch of notes on some classified documents about Afghanistan. And reportedly, some of those notes contain things like, hey, we need to, telling Obama, hey, we need to pull out of Afghanistan. And so, those kinds of notes, he's claiming, well, those are my notes. Those are my notes, my things. Well, guess what? That's exactly what Trump said about all the documents that supposedly he found. Oh, those are personal notes. I've got personal notes. They're personal letters. They're personal whatever. Personal documents, personal documentation. So it's going to be interesting to see what this report actually does with the Jack Smith obstruction and classified documents case that is going on against Trump. But even though that is interesting, we also have a couple of other things that have come out of this report as well. The first one, obviously, being whether or not Biden is cognitively impaired to be president. So some of the questions that were asked through his interview were actually even worse and more damning than some of the pictures. Things like questions like on tapes. Now, Technofog, I've used some of his stuff before on here, but Technofog has followed this along with a couple of others, a couple of other things, and he's really breaking it down on this thing. So in the tapes in 2017, Biden was writing a book, and in that book, he was using a ghostwriter. Now, for those of you that don't know, a ghostwriter basically is someone who writes the book for you under your name. Okay. It can happen a lot because you'll get people who essentially can't put a sentence together or a paragraph together or any of that stuff. And so anyway, apparently in tapes in 2017, Biden told his ghostwriter that he, quote, found all the classified stuff downstairs at his Delaware home. Those same documents, or what we assume to be those same documents, were later found by the FBI. And Herr kind of wrote that this evidence sort of shows that Biden willfully retained the marked classified documents, in particular about Afghanistan. So in other words, at least back in 2017, now for those of you that don't remember, but I do, Trump was elected in 2016. So Biden was no longer VP at the time in 2017. So, at least at 2017, he knew that he had classified documents, and he even said that they were classified. Oh, do you remember the tape that came out of Donald Trump saying that he was holding up a freaking document and was like, see, this is a classified document, and the left went nuts saying that, oh, that proves that Trump's document was actually classified? And that he knew it was classified, and that, oh, I should have declassified it when I was president, but didn't? Do you remember that? Guess what? Same situation here. This is not looking good. This is not looking good for these folks. A little bit further down, he also, again, the report kind of pulls out that he disclosed classified info in his notebooks to his ghostwriter. He unlawfully retained those classified notebooks post-vice presidency. He continues on where the recordings from 2017 captures Biden handing his ghostwriter a whole bunch of classified info, not just once, not just twice, not just in an example talking to the press, but a bunch of different times. And he was on record on those tapes that the info was probably classified. And by the way, there's also some evidence and rumor that the ghostwriter attempted to erase some of these tapes in order to try and cover up when they found the documents. So Biden's excuse to the special counsel when he was questioned about those things, Biden explained that when he described material in his notebooks as classified, he actually did not mean classified. Even though they found documents that were actually, had classified markings on them and stuff. But there's even more. And I'm just telling you, there is even more. Do you remember that whole news narrative that, oh my gosh, Biden, he only had like just a handful of documents, or no, it was only just like 3 or 4 or 5 or maybe 10. And Trump had thousands of documents. Okay. Remember all that? Well, guess what? Inside the special counsel's report, it reveals that the number of documents that Biden actually had that they found numbered in the 300 plus. Oh, this thing, man, I almost wish that they would have held on to this report until like September or October. To be honest with you, because this is like an October surprise, sort of like the Hunter Biden laptop was back in October of 2020. This is just fantastic of information. So the media smeared Trump for retaining more than 300 classified documents, but then talked about Biden's lawyer's spin where they were saying, oh, it was just 6 items. Well, now he willfully retained apparently over 300 items as well. Yeah. Let me see if I can find it here. Let's see if I can find it. We now know that the 6 items that had personally handwritten notes on them included notebooks filled with Joe Biden's summaries of classified briefings, and a quick count from the special counsel's appendix revealed the government recovered more than 300 pages of top secret and classified documents. The FBI also seized a hard drive, but the appendix lacks any details on its contents. And this is coming from the Federalist. This is an article in the Federalist. All right. So obviously Biden is doing more than what he appears. Now, of course, after that thing dropped and the fact that we had the SCOTUS go very, very badly on it, okay, the Democrats decided to trot the old guy out for a press conference. In fact, it was an impromptu press conference that they hastily threw together. And so whatever they normally do when he goes and, when he comes on TV and is actually coherent and, lively and stuff like that in front of the teleprompters, for, 15, 20 minutes, even up to like a half an hour where he doesn't really make any mistakes. They didn't have the opportunity to do that for him on this. So he comes out Thursday night in this really quick presser. He was supposed to be out there for maybe 5 minutes to basically say that, well, the report hit and the special prosecutor has decided not to continue with his indictment of me. And so, yeah, they basically have exonerated me by not pressing charges. That's all he would have had to say. It may not have even had to, it probably would have been a lot more refined than that, but that's all he would have had to say. But instead, the guy comes out and Ben Shapiro, if you have a Daily Wire subscription, Ben Shapiro's podcast, you should listen to Ben Shapiro's podcast, even if you don't have a Daily Wire subscription. I think it's available on Spotify. But you should seriously listen. He walks through the whole thing and tells you time at each approximate time when Biden starts screwing up. He was out there for 3 freaking minutes, folks. 3 minutes. And he starts failing and falling. Now, if it were me, I wouldn't have let Joe Biden. If his cognitive and his his faculties are in question, he never should have gone out for this presser. He never should have been in front of the microphone. We know how he struggles with the teleprompter and how when he goes off script, it goes into an incoherent mumbling of gobbledygook and babbledy-bloggle. I don't even know if that's a word. But he goes out to this press conference where he's supposed to look like he is in full grasp of his mental faculties, that he's sharp as a tack, like they've all been talking about, like the White House has been discussing for weeks, that Karine Jean-Pierre is like, no, he's sharp, he's quick, he's, fast and blah, blah, blah. And he goes to this presser that's not even 5 minutes. And he frickin' falls flat on his face. Oh my gosh. He exploded at reporters who pointed out voters' concerns about his age and declared that he was the most qualified person in America to be president. During the event, he completely mixed up the presidents of Egypt and Mexico. He forgot the name of the church, which, by the way, that little incident, okay, he grabbed the rosary on his wrist and he pulls it out and starts to mention about the rosary. Now, the rosary reportedly comes from when Bo died, they went and bought it. And Biden wears it on his wrist. And when he pulls it out, you can see him. He starts to say where, essentially where he got the rosary from in order to attempt to show that he is, completely cognizant, and he fumbles the ball. He crashes and burns. He gets halfway through saying the church and just completely, you see his whole mind goes blank. His eyes go blank. He can't remember what he was talking about. And then he sort of mumbles and goes on to the next thing. And, yeah. Even CNN people, even, the news media who have been trying to cover for him all this time have decided that this is a very, very sad and bad situation. Here in the article from the Daily Wire regarding his disastrous press conference, states longtime Democrat strategist and former Clinton White House aide Paul Begala said on CNN, "Look, I'm a Biden supporter, and I slept like a baby last night. I woke up every 2 hours crying and wet the bed." The social media, so many leftist lunatic accounts were crying about the mainstream media, which is normally the propagandist arm of the Democrats and the leftist loons. They were crying about how Biden was being portrayed in the media. And they have spent a lot of time trying to say that Donald Trump is in the same boat as what Joe Biden is. Now, I'm okay. Skipping stuff, mixing people up. When you are literally going from place to place, you've even seen superstars who have done this before, and it's embarrassing. When they're standing up on stage, when all they do is go from place to place to place, like maybe they could travel from city to city to city or state to state to state, and they make a mistake on stage, like they're in, Portland, Oregon, and they just were in Seattle, Washington, and they come out on stage on Portland, Oregon, and they go, "Hello, Seattle." And they, everybody, of course, in the place just goes, "What?" That's called fatigue. But to be sitting in a nice, calm environment for the most part, in an office somewhere, and not being able to remember key dates in your life, it's just, yeah, it's really sad. According to a Democrat House member in this article, speaking anonymously, he or she told NBC News that the special counsel's assessment was a nightmare that weakens President Biden electorally. The member said, "For Democrats, we're in a grim situation." You think? I'd say for America, we're in a grim situation. Not just for Democrats, but in America, because this guy holds the nuclear frickin' football. Well, it's not just the public that is questioning it. We also have people who are physicians and former physicians who are questioning it too. For an example, from this Washington Examiner article, Biden's physical takes on renewed importance after the Her revelations. So here's the thing. The White House shared Biden's results of a physical. Okay. his most recent physical, which was ironically last February. Now, he was supposed to have a checkup in 2022. That got postponed until 2023. During that time, the White House physician, or in 2023, in February of 2023, keep in mind, we're in February of 2024. Okay. So in February of 2023, the White House physician, Dr. Kevin O'Connor, issued a 5-page health summary and referred to a neurological consultation concerning the president's stiff walk, but not a cognitive test, such as the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, which detects dementia or other forms of decline, according to Representative Ronnie Jackson, who, for those of you that may not know, he used to be a physician. Okay, he served alongside O'Connor at the White House when he was former President Donald Trump's physician. Now, Trump's had the Montreal test when he was in office. Now, to be fair to Ronnie Jackson, okay, he didn't want to diagnose Biden, all right? However, he does mention, though, that the president's memory lapses were cognitive and related to his age, and would have been, had he been the doctor, recommending a full cognitive panel instead of a simple screening test like the Montreal. Okay? So Jackson told the Washington Examiner, quote, he should not be our president or our head of state because he's not got the cognitive wherewithal or ability to do this job. There's tests he can take that, if he passed them, would put the country at ease. But I can tell you right now, just based on what I've seen, that he wouldn't pass those tests. And that's the reason he's not doing the tests. This is from a former physician of a former president who is basically saying this. And he further makes a comment further down where he says, they're working off the old mantra, don't ask questions you don't want the answers to. Basically referring to the White House. This is a huge deal, folks. I mean, we're already the laughingstock of the world, really, just by having Joe Biden in office. But the fact that we now have a president who very well could be cognitively impaired, okay, this is a big, big issue. Big issue. There's some representatives who are now calling for possibly using the 25th Amendment, by the way. I've been hearing rumors and seeing articles of people who are essentially calling it out. But you know what? You know who's not calling it out? You know who is not calling it out? Straight up. Doesn't surprise anyone. Shouldn't. But according to post-millennial Rachel Maddow, says that Biden is definitely mentally fit for office because, quote, he rides a bike. Now, this is something that's been going around on social media a couple different times. They go and the left seems to think that just because Joe Biden is able to ride a bike, which, by the way, I seem to recall showing at one time on this program a location that was going to be renamed to Biden Falls, Maryland, I think, or Delaware. No, Biden Falls, Delaware, because Biden fell off his bike. But hey, he can ride one. And the left keeps going and talking about how Trump, put Trump on a bike. Put Trump on a bike. And I'm going, I don't care if Trump can be on a frickin' bike. I don't care if the man can pedal a bike or not. What I care about is whether or not he has the mental capacity and the physical stamina to be able to perform the office of the presidency to the best of his ability, which is what he swears to in his oath. And I can tell you, I don't care whether Biden can jump on a bike and pedal. He literally can't do it. Anyway, so of course, Russia Rachel, that's what she's going to do. Okay. Now, here it is. So Speaker Johnson and top Republicans are now calling for Biden's resignation, following the release of the Hur report. No surprise here. I mean, they really should. Because again, this was there was a call for, Nixon's resignation as well. So yeah, it's just, this report, I don't care. I mean, I know that, a lot of people are like, put him in jail. To be honest with you, at his age, not that I'm trying to give him a pass or anything, but realistically, the man's been through enough. We just need to get him out of office and get the Biden family, the Clinton family, and the Obama family out of freaking politics, American politics completely. Just get those three out of here. Gone. They don't need to be in politics anymore. And so now there's a big call for him to either resign or get removed by the 25th Amendment, which, again, we're in the last leg of a 4-year term. So realistically, I mean, yeah, just take him out. He doesn't need to be here. Now, of course, there's another piece to all of this, by the way, and that is that Biden is apparently very frustrated, according to this article in Red State, that Attorney General Garland didn't, quote, move sooner on the Trump election interference case. Now, for those of you that don't recall, the election interference, of course, was the one, I believe, in Georgia that was the issue. So I don't understand why Garland is even talking about it. Or actually, this might even be the one in DC, because there's so many that I just don't remember. But anyway, there you go. I'm cognitively impaired because I don't remember freaking things that, anyway. So a news story dropped yesterday, detailing Biden's growing frustration with Attorney Merrick Garland after the release of the Hur report lent more credence to the allegations, with sources stating that privately Biden had been grumbling to those close to him about the fact that Garland didn't move sooner on the Trump election interference investigation, because maybe by this point he might have already been tried and convicted and presumably out of the way. So once again, we have Joe Biden, who is doing what they keep blaming Trump is potentially going to do in terms of being a complete dictator. And he's doing exactly that, attempting to jail his number one opponent, his number one political opponent. So, now there is a question in this article with regards to whether or not this breaking, like it is clear evidence that the story was planted by a senior level Biden official who wanted to send a warning message to Garland. But it is also predicted that if Biden were to win a second term, he wouldn't retain Garland as AG. So, again, we're starting to sort of see the cracks in the White House walls and collections to try and figure this stuff out. Now, of course, they They're not the only ones, but here's the ultimate effect out of this. This in Breitbart, remember before, I've reported on this before, there was only about 75% of Americans who were a little bit concerned about Biden's cognitive decline. Well, guess what? Now we're up to 9 in 10. For those of you that don't do math, that's 90% of Americans now have concerns about his age and his physical and mental health. And believe me, this kind of thing is coming out. It's a whopping 89% of Americans have concerns to varying degrees that President Joe Biden lacks the physical and mental health for a second term, according to an NBC News poll. Now, this was published on Tuesday, and it was ahead of the press conference, ahead of the report of the poll. So it's really kind of interesting. I would love to see if this poll actually goes to now 100%, because apparently in the poll, it essentially was, 62% of the registered voters nationally have major concerns, and another 14% have moderate worries, and 13% expressed minor concerns. I wonder if they're going to redo this poll. Wonder if he's going to redo this poll, if they're going to redo this poll and see what happens. Well, one of the biggest things that is now in question, given this report and given Biden's just disastrous press conference, who do they go to next? Now, some people have floated Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom has actually had a bit of a downfall, honestly. And in terms of the national public sphere, mainly just because of the fact that Ron DeSantis, I think in their debate, while not too many people actually watched it, I think Ron DeSantis actually cleaned his clock. And that was evidenced by the fact that Gavin Newsom agreed to an additional hour when Sean Hannity asked if they would hold over into Sean Hannity's show slot time. And then when they went to commercial break, that report, as I explained to you in that episode shortly after that happened, was that his wife stepped in and said, no, we're done. So that right there just kind of tells you where Gavin Newsom sort of sits. But now there's some other suggestion running around, and this from the Washington Examiner also, that it may not be Gavin Newsom, or actually even a man anywhere. So here they put together a short list of who could replace Biden if voters decide that he can't remember how to lead. And I'm just going to go through these quickly. Obviously, Vice President Kamala Harris is in the first slot. Well, nobody likes her. So, yeah, we'll just leave that one alone. The next one, which I thought was kind of interesting, that came out was Gretchen Whitmer. Gretchen Whitmer, they're suggesting, or they're floating, that she could be put in Biden's place. And then you have this person, Tammy Duckworth, who could they've also floated. Now, this is a senator from Illinois, and apparently she was on Biden's shortlist for running mates in 2020 before he picked Kamala Harris. Honestly, he probably should have gone with Duckworth. Would have been a lot better. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know anything about Duckworth, but I could just imagine that anything's better than Kamala. Anyway, they also have floated Amy Klobuchar. Now, I've seen some of Amy's posts on X. Believe me, she is no winner. She's no winner. And then, of course, at the very bottom of the list, they float Michelle Obama. Now, this, I'm not entirely sold on this. I'm not entirely sold on this. And the reason being is because there is clear evidence, clear times where she, I use that very loosely. She says that she has no interest in politics whatsoever. She doesn't want to be in politics. But I guarantee you that if you think that Trump, if she were to throw her hat in the ring, if you don't think that Trump would go after her and the Trump team would go after her mercilessly for all the things that she talked about in terms of hating America, only being proud of America because her husband was voted as president, or even the fact that she quite possibly could be a person by the name of Michael Robinson. This is, I'm telling you, she would be opening herself up to scrutiny that I don't think she wants. And Dan Bongino doesn't think that it's going to happen. So I honestly believe that this is just rumor at this point. And realistically, I'm not even going to supposition who they could have, because their bench, the Dems bench, is so freaking empty right now in terms of who's coming up next. And to be honest, the Republicans are kind of in the same boat. Okay. And the reason being is because Ron DeSantis, if he'd have kept his damn mouth shut and stayed out of the freaking race until 2028, he probably should have just, jumped in 2028. And if he had, and Ron DeSantis, if he had, he would have been a shoo-in for 2028. But instead, he went and decided to go back on his word and jumped in and freaking screwed his political career. So even now, the the Republican bench is a little thin. And honestly, whoever Trump picks as his running mate for VP, that person is going to have the de facto crown bestowed upon them as the carrier of the torch for the next time. Now, again, they keep floating Michelle Obama. I don't see it just yet, but anything can happen. We all know the Democrats and what they do. We all know that this is going to be 2024. I'm telling you, this is going to be a entertaining, if nothing else, election. Now, sad news again for them. Just the news. Trump leads by wide margins in every single major Super Tuesday state, according to a poll that just came out. Nikki Haley still in the contest because she's got money. She just got trounced in Nevada. In fact, she got trounced, as I said in my last episode, she got trounced by none of the above in Nevada in the primary, and in the caucus, I don't even think she showed. So Trump won the caucus, which is the one that counted. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm just laughing about that. But Donald Trump apparently is poised to win the party nod. Which doesn't really surprise me. According to a recent Morning Consult survey, and again, this is in Just the News, it shows Trump leading Haley in every contest, including her home state of South Carolina, where he leads her by 37 points. And South Carolina is going to hold its primary in February before Super Tuesday. Super Tuesday is a critical date in the primary process. It's scheduled for March 5th. And it's when an abundance of the states hold their primary elections on that day. That's why it's called Super Tuesday. Okay. And it can typically serve as a choke point to filter out stragglers in a crowded contest. We're not in a crowded contest. Pretty much everybody knows Trump is the leader and is going to be the de facto. And in fact, if Nikki Haley had any kind of dignity at all, she would bow out. But, whatever. She's going to stay in as long as the money keeps flowing to her. That's just how it is. Now, I'm going to take a second because I gotta throw this out there. One of the problems that we're going to have with 2024 is the fact that there are certain things that are still unresolved from 2020. Now, granted, a lot of the quick rules that were changed for the COVID restrictions in 2020, okay, they're back to what would be considered normal, I guess. That a lot of those restrictions, those changes, the last minute rules that were tossed in to try and make it easier for people to vote under the pandemic, et cetera, a lot of those things have been rescinded. Okay. So now what we have is a interesting layout for 2024. But we're still doing some postmortems. We're still doing some postmortems on 2020. And in fact, I even talked about this, this particular study or poll that was done. And this article comes from the Blaze Media. So let me just bring that up here. So this article in the Blaze Media was referring to a poll that was done of almost 2,000 people where they essentially were talking about the widespread mail-in voting fraud. And the poll, if you recall, it was a Heartland Institute and Rasmussen report survey where, they asked just over 1,000 voters, not 2,000. They asked just over 1,000 voters who participated in 2020 about their voting behaviors 3 years prior. Now, those results, and I talked about it because I remember this, that at least 1 in 5 mail-in voters admitted on that poll to committing ballot fraud, meaning that they voted they received a ballot and they voted even though they were no longer a resident in the county or the state. Or they voted, they voted when they shouldn't have voted, whatever the reason, but they admitted to the fact that they voted when they shouldn't have. And that particular poll kind of made a little bit of a splash, not a big one, but a little bit of splash in the media. So one of the things that actually caught the attention, that same poll caught the attention of President Trump. And he talked about it where it was the most important poll that was released in the last 20 years and the biggest story of the year. Now, some of the Blaze Media folks decided to go ahead and take another look with the idea that the extrapolation of this information in this poll, meaning that 1 in 5 mail-in voters admitted to committing fraud, they went back to some of the vote counts and they examined, and this is from the Heartland Institute, they actually studied the actual vote counts and applied that ratio, 1 in 5, to the actual mail-in voting to sort of evaluate and see if there was an effect of it. And this report, by the way, this report kind of reveals something extremely interesting. Here's the report right here, and this is some of the results. I'm going to go ahead and zoom this in a little bit. So they went and actually did a post-mortem analysis, and they really found, that it was more than 1 in 5. It was actually 1 in 4. who admitted to it after they reevaluated the results that they got back. And so they went and they evaluated the states, especially the ones that were in question. And they found that the official results, as you can see on the screen here, for Arizona, for an example, Trump only lost by around roughly 10,000 votes or so. And if they applied that 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 fraudulent ballot, it actually changed the results in Arizona. It actually caused Trump to beat Biden. And the same thing in different numbers, but the same thing happened in Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and ultimately, when they applied a roughly 28.2% fraud level, meaning that almost just under a third of mail-in ballots were actually fraudulent, okay? Trump wins in 2020 with 311 electoral votes. They dropped that down from 28%, the maximum that they found, and they dropped it in between 27% to 14% fraud. And they figured out they did this in different levels. So yeah, so 28% was assuming that the Electoral College total is Biden 277, Trump 311. Then they went 27 to 14% by ranging it, and Trump wins all 6 of the states: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, though his margin of victory shrinks a little bit. But he still wins, okay? Now, they drop it down from 13 to 6% fraud. So let's just, again, they went from the maximum amount that they found, and they're bringing it down slowly, a little further and a little further. At the 13% level, Trump still wins at 289 Electoral College votes. If they assume between 13 to 6%. Now, when they lower it down to 6%, he still wins the 4 states of Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And so he still wins, even if there was only 6% of fraud in mail-in balloting. Now they go down even further, and they show that if it was even 5% and 4% of fraud, Biden and Trump would have actually come out even at 269. That, my friends, would have triggered a House vote, House of Representatives vote, to determine who was the president of the United States. Now, they are speculating, of course, that because Republicans controlled more state delegates after 2020, that it would likely have gone Trump's way, that he would have been chosen. But again, that's speculation because, again, remember, we hold the House of Representatives right now, even after 2022, when the Republicans actually held it after 2020 as well. So, the percentage actually narrowed. So anyway, even if a small percent of fraud, even at just 3% of fraud, it wouldn't have been a runaway. Biden would have had 279 and Trump would have had 259 in this scenario. And when you scroll down at 2% fraud and 1% fraud, you're looking at 306 Biden versus Trump at 232. So, yeah, it's, this, you know, again, I'm not saying that fraud actually happened. And I don't think we even have to prove it, because mail-in ballot fraud has been a question for years. In fact, the New York Times even talked about it. Yeah, even the New York Times talked about mail-in balloting fraud. But again, this points to a problematic issue that we have, that we still have not addressed, and that we need to address before 2024. Now, ideally, a lot of those states that went and did mail-in balloting actually have rescinded that stuff, ideally. But we'll have to see. Just kind of goes to show you that there should be a postmortem done on 2020. Before it's done. One thing I want to, Ainsley Michelle over on Rumble, she's asking about or talking about Pet of the Week. And also the same email address goes for questions for whiskey, which I'll get to in just a second. But Pet of the Week and questions for whiskey goes to fans at whiskeymusings.com. Make sure that you spell musings correctly. So fans at Whiskey Musing, FANS at whiskeymusings.com, and you'll be able to send in your Pet of the Week, which is my Wednesday segment, or a question for whiskey, which is, of course, tonight's segment. And let's go ahead and get to it. All right, tonight's question for whiskey comes from Buddy Weiser over on Rumble. And this one's kind of a interesting one, I think. Buddy writes, "Greetings. I hope this finds you well and with stout spirits." Of course I have stout spirits. I've had a lot of stout spirits. It's just a fantastic week. This week, ending of the week. Oh, that's not what you're talking about. Well, I've got plenty in my bottles. Thank you for that. I continue. These are simple but hopefully interesting questions regarding a few laws. Question number 1. What was the very first law that our Congress voted on and the president signed into existence? And number 2 is, what was the most recent law that was passed and signed? And he goes, thanks, Buddy Weiser. All right. So I am taking your question about the first law that our Congress voted on as being the first law in history passed and signed in the first Continental Congress. I'm assuming that's it. So here we go. The very first act of the very first Congress and the very first law that was signed by President George Washington, where they met in New York City in March of 1789. The new Constitution had just been ratified. Congress was the first part of the new federal government, and they were getting together to start to mold this brand new government into shape. They needed a whole bunch of things. They needed the Treasury Department, the War Department, they needed Foreign Affairs Department, the federal judiciary from the SCOTUS all the way down. So SCOTUS, for those of you that remember and, look into your Constitution, okay, look in your book. Article 3, which covers the judiciary, was actually written as the last article to the Constitution. In fact, it was like done at the tail end of the Constitutional Convention. And it was sort of like, almost like an afterthought, really, which is part of the reason why Article 3 isn't exactly all that big or really all that detailed, because the delegates were like, look, we're done. We've been here 100 days. We're out of here, kind of thing. And anyway, so the rest of the judiciary from like the Supreme Court, and even some of the actions of the Supreme Court were done by the First Continental Congress, the first Congress ever. Okay. But here's the thing. The very first thing, even though they were, they had to work on money, they had to work on developing all these things, they had to develop all of the stuff that was listed in Article 1, Section 8. They had all of that stuff that they had to create. But what they did, before they got to any of that pressing business, what was the most important thing on their mind was to pass what is known as an act to regulate the time and manner of administering certain oaths. They shoved all of that other important business aside, and to them, the biggest thing that they had to handle very first off was to have an oath of office and prescribe in words the specific procedure for administering those oaths. The oaths to the Constitution. The act itself mandated that the oath be administered in the following format. I, state your name, do solemnly swear or affirm, as the case may be, that I will support the Constitution of the United States. That was the first thing. And it was done in fulfillment of the constitutional requirement in Article 6, Clause 3. That was the very first one, and it was signed into law on June 1, 1789 by President George Washington. Now, for your second question, what's the most recent law that was passed and signed by the president? Well, the most recent one was introduced December 6th, 2023, and was actually signed by the president, meaning that it was actually enacted into law just on February 6th this year, 2024. That bill is Senate Bill number 3427, which is a bill to extend the authority to provide employees of the United States Secret Service with overtime pay beyond other statutory limitations and for other purposes. That's the title. And that is the bill, the latest bill, according to my research, the latest bill that was passed and actually enacted by the president back on February 6th, 2024. And that is my final Whiskey Musings thought for the evening. Do me a favor. If you like the program, if you like the information that I bring, the conversations that I have, that kind of stuff, hit the thumbs up button on your, and the like button, whatever it is, on your preferred outlets. And especially remember to please head on over to Rumble, get yourself an account, and make sure you follow the Whiskey Musings Broadcast. That's my major outlet. That's the one outlet that I think will keep me going if I do something really stupid, and they hate it. And they kick me off of everything else. So head on over to Rumble, get yourself an account, and make sure to follow. The accounts are free. Okay, the accounts are free. Don't forget, Wednesday night is Valentine's Day. Mrs. Whiskey will be standing right here next to me. And I'm actually, believe it or not, I am going to subject myself to the opening of the phone lines. So I think I'm going to open up the phone lines for that show. So if you want to talk to her, see if there's some embarrassing questions for her or something that's going to make me turn as red as my background will be, make sure that you get ready to call in, because I think I'll have the phone line open for that if I can make sure that it works. That will be at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, right here on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and hey, going into Monday, just be prepared. Those lefties are probably still going to be out there pissed off. They're sort of like hornets. They're just irritated. Anyway, we'll see you all later. You have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you next time on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Good night, everybody.
The Whiskey Musings broadcast is produced by Active Eye Media, LLC. All rights reserved.